So if I go buy something with an Apple Card from a store, the merchant pays more for that. How much more?
Well, they could pay as much as 50 cents more than they would pay on like a typical transaction. And it's something that, we deal with credit cards every single day. It's, part of the consumer experience, but you never think about the fact that even though you're getting all these extra points or rewards, like someone has to pay for that. It's the whole, like, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And it turns out, the merchants are paying for that. And everyone knows, like, merchants don't like it when you use a credit card, but I think it's not as well known that, like, for some of these cards, like the Apple Card or, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, it's actually even more expensive than it is for them on a typical credit card.
So now some of these merchants are pushing back and saying that they don't want to accept some of these cards, but it's complicated, right? Because if they say they don't want to accept a Visa card, they would have to say we don't accept any Visa cards.
Right. So the Visa and MasterCard network rules, they set the rules and they say, hey, like if you are going to accept Visa cards, you need to accept all of the tiers. That means, the most basic and the highest. It's like an accept all rule. Some of the merchants are pushing back and they're saying that's not fair because we're getting stuck, like, shouldering the cost of all these rewards for millennials or whomever is like the most, biggest reward spender, and that's not fair. We saw Kroger last year actually said that they weren't going to allow Visa cards at their stores. They ended up coming to some agreement with the networks, and now they're allowing them again. But if you think about it, grocery stores are like some of the lowest profit margin businesses, and so they're the ones that are really making a stink on this, because we saw data that showed that the average profit margin for a grocery store is 3%, and so if the fee is $1.75, like that's more than half of the profit they would have gotten on a $100 transaction.
So the way they're sort of muscling these retailers, it seems like at some point, could we see consumers end up having to shoulder, I guess, part of that $1.75, and you fold that into, however much? Because some of these cards already have pretty high annual fees.
Yeah, but the thing is, the annual fees actually, they don't have anything to do with the interchange fees. Like, that's something that, you pay the bank so that they give you the rewards. But banks also love when you use rewards cards because every single time you swipe, even if you don't carry a balance, they collect this high interchange fee. So something that could happen is that, if this lawsuit that Visa and MasterCard are involved in with some of the retailers ends up in the retailers' favor, that could mean that they do have more say over what happened, like what cards they can accept. It could also be that in the next administration, if there are different regulators, they could change some of the rules, maybe put caps on interchange, something like that, which
It could also be an antitrust issue, right? Because it's Visa and MasterCard, and then who?
Well.
There's Discover,
right, but
American
there's
Express.
it's a pretty concentrated market, so one could imagine, in theory, using that approach to crack down on some of these practices.
No, it's true. It's something that Visa and MasterCard have been called out on before by, the banks and also the retailers. So it all remains to be seen.
All right.
So does Apple have anything to do with this or not?
In what? Well, in the sense that they issued it on like one of the elite, premier tiers.
They chose that tier, but that's about it. That like after this, their hands are tied as well.
Right, and the reason they did that is the reason they can justify, this higher interchange is because they say, people who use these luxury rewards cards actually spend more, and so, that's why we do it.